Hi, I'm Joe, co-founder of Mythic Markets. Daniel Chang and I first met at Magic Fest Las Vegas. He's the owner of VintageMagic.com and is also an avid art collector. After Mythic Markets acquired Benalish Hero from Josh, the previous owner, I learned that Daniel also used to own the piece, along with many others. He had so many great stories to tell about the Wild West days of the game, his business, and collecting, and I felt they had to be shared. I hope you enjoy the conversation.
Josh and I have met many times and we've done lots of big deals and we're friends. And I think I think the thing I always say to everybody is the same thing. It's pretty much magic has become this massive pop culture phenomenon. It's become more than that, right? It's a part of our lives, in many ways. And whatever card you pick, and in this case, Benalish Hero, um, it might have been a card that you won a deck with, right? Or you may have just loved the artwork. It was interesting because like it's so innocent back in the day, the art. Like when I met with Doug and purchased the art, as at his house, and I mean, I'm not kidding you, Joe. I literally, like I was telling you before, I didn't think when I first started this, I thought all the magic art was gone, if that makes sense. Like all the alpha arts. I mean, it's alpha art for the love of God. And to my surprise, like I had no idea it wasn't gone. And I started researching more on eBay. I was always bigger into sports collectibles, but I always want to, get into magic as an investment and collectible, more. And I made more money in corporate America, and I want to start my own company, which is now the VintageMagic.com. Um, and I was just like, man, I was amazed that all these pieces, like I think at the time, Doug had Obulette, uh, Power Surge. Uh, I'm missing a lot because I purchased a lot from them, right? And I was just sitting there like, how in the world are these pieces still around? I mean, obviously, like iconic ones like Prodigal Sorcerer that was already ex Wizards and Coast employee or something. He has it, right? And that's a very famous one, Tim, right? The guy's name's Tim, but it's just Doug was always, what I really like about Doug's art? It was so simple, right? It was like I think Richard Garfield really wanted the. I think it was Jesper, not Richard Garfield. Jesper Meerforst, art director, wanted the artwork to pop out so you could see it right across and play when you're playing the game. And Doug was always to me um, the best at the simplicity part, if that made sense. Just kind of, it was just that, what I mean? Like you see a one figure person. Force of Nature was, you got this big green guy, right? And Ice Manipulator, obviously, the ice, it's just this one ball. You don't have what you see today, the newer Magic. It's all fancy landscape and fancy colors and dark, kind of different tones to kind of light. Back in the day in Alpha, it was so iconic and it's weird. Like, I mean, I still remember all those days when I opened those packs and, Benalish Hero wasn't my favorite card to pull out, but, I remember pulling that card out of the pack. And I just remember how, like, man, this artist, which when I was a kid, like, this artist is incredible. Like, he draws such simple figures, but they're so memorable, if that makes sense. And now fast forwarding to as an adult, I'm 40 now, but back then I was much younger. I was in my 20. Oh, my math is bad. Anyway, it was years ago. It was probably it was yeah, it was like 11 years ago, something like that, like 10, 11 years ago, right, something like that. And I I think like as you make more money and as you kind of build your like your personal life, right, money, you start wanting to collect the things that you love, and obviously like with the Pokemon stuff, and you got the comic explosion before, the baseball card things going crazy, sports cards. It just shows you that whole explosion hasn't changed. I mean, people thought when I was doing the Magic collecting um, back in like years ago, right, when I first did this, before I did the whole vintage Magic thing, people are like, why are you buying these cards and artwork? Don't you know it's not, and back in the day, I'm telling you, this is a great story. It literally was the Wild West. Like I've been told that I was like the first person to kind of mainstream this and buy in larger quantities. And I guess I don't know if that's true or not, but I guess I had a vision or a belief that the collectibles would have value, but I actually was buying them because I liked them. And one of the things that I really, I was kind of confused at that point in my life. Like, interesting thing was I was buying the artwork, but then I realized, man, I also have this business I want to do because the artwork, could be sold. And Josh approached me and stuff, Patel, and then I could sell the artwork for potentially buy more cards. I mean, and by the way, you can kind of do a contrast here. An Alpha Lotus, mint Alpha Lotus at that time was around $2,500. $2,500. So a Benalish Hero, I bought for, I don't remember what I bought it for, but it was very little, right? And then you sell it and get an Alpha. Let's say I sold for an Alpha Black Lotus, essentially. That's how I looked at it, right? And so I sold a lot of art to Josh because I was like, I want to be I want to create a market, but I also I knew the cards would be the way that grading the cards, right, would be the way to make the good money in terms of selling. And ultimately at that point in my career, I wanted to create a business, right? But quote me on this, our collectors, if you're listening, whatever, like back in that day, right? You don't really know, like you have to decide, right? Like, here I am quitting my corporate America job, and I wanted to do something with magic, right? So I sold pieces that I've acquired to Josh, and I'm telling you, everybody out there, do not sell your pieces of art if you have any inkling that it means something to you sentimentally. Don't ever sell it, because once you do that, it really affects you in a very, like if you really enjoy the art. And I'll be honest, there's pieces that I sold that I got back from Josh and from other people, and I'm much more happier now. So it's one of those weird things, right? You just, you pay a lot more for them back, and that's also one of the problems. And sometimes you may never get the piece back ever, which is really sad, because it's kind of like, it's nice to see that another collector appreciates it, but at the same time, if you really, really love that piece, I highly recommend don't ever sell it. Ever sell it. So, but anyway, at that time, it was a different time of magic, right? You have different periods of times, and in the terms of investing in magic, I took revenues from magic art, grading the cards, and just kept compounding and buying more and more collections, more Alpha Lotuses, basically, Alpha Power, Power 9, and I honestly don't know how many cards I have. So it's just one of those things where, and I'm not saying this to brag, I'm talking about more from the business side, right? That the reality is that if you make a business decision, like magic cards are like a piece of real estate, right? They're a piece of property, right? And so you have to pick different properties. We have Monopoly, you have different properties, right? And if you go to the boardwalk side, magic art, Park Place and Boardwalk, I would give it Alpha Art on the top of that list. And it really has this incredible history behind it. A lot of people would look at the art and be like, just like Mark Poole said in one of my videos, he said, even like a third grader can like paint this. But like the Birds of Paradise, I think he said in one of my videos, I forgot what grade he's quoted, but he's absolutely correct. It's very simplistic, very simple, but it's iconic. It's special. And I always say to people, it's the innocence. It was the first. And you have to appreciate that. Like, it doesn't matter how, you may not like it. You may not like the art, and that's great. You may not like what the card does, but you got to appreciate the history, because the history is what this has become. So I think for your investors and people out there who are investing in art. And I think, you know, I think of the Giant Growth. The Giant Growth actually was a piece I owned also at one point. And we'll get that later on. But it's funny. I met a collector who had several pieces, and it was an incredible story. Um, he had he had artwork, he had artist proofs, beta artist proofs, and he was from the Midwest or something. And I flew him out, and we met in a hotel lobby, and I just bought everything. And again, same around time frame, right? Wild West type of stuff, right? And I'm just now I look back at all that, I reflect on, you know, I'm 40 years old now. I'm like, man, those days were just so different, right? You don't have the instantaneous magic card market, or you don't have what you guys are doing, Mythic markets. You don't have this type of thing. It's very old school in a way, still, you know, relative, right? And I think that's really cool, you know. And I still tell, you know, and one of these days I'll tell my kids more about business stuff. But I find it anyway. I find it to be incredibly amazing to be a part of that tradition of collecting, because as a collector, I think a lot of you would understand is that we often are hunters, right? We search. And back in that day, I wanted to search for art and collect it and invest in it. A lot of people got upset and said, well, you're just taking away from the market, and no one else could ever see it. But I mean, isn't that what every collector does? They buy stuff and they love it, right? And so, you know, pieces that I've acquired over the years are insane and that I don't even have anymore, like Juzam Djinn, Mana Drain. You know, I brokered the deal for Peter Atkinson's collection, the CEO of Magic, with the Black Lotus that Josh has now, and I think 5 Power 9 pieces, stuff like that, right? And I'll kind of leave with this story. Kind of a cool story was what started me with the magic art, and I kind of got more and more just serious about it. It's actually in my podcast with Sam Tang and Kitchen Table Magic. It's like 2.5 hours or something. If someone wants to watch it. There was a collection from a guy on the East Coast that me and my friend Troy at the time flew over there. I think it was in the Boston area. I don't remember. And it was an incredible trip. And I think this guy like was one of the founders of something with Microsoft or something. I don't know what it was. Something like that in the tech industry. But remember, this was 2009 or 2010, 2009, right? That winter or something. And here I am, you know, like I've always done the business on the side, you know, during the corporate career. But here I am, you know, now just I quit my job as a corporate sales and like transportation sales. I used to work for FedEx at one point, stuff like that. And I go with Troy, and we didn't know what to, you know, I knew that this guy had, you know, alpha set, beta set, all that kind of stuff, right? The Arabian set, you know. And imagine walking into this dining room filled with like, you know, just all the stuff I just named, Arabian Nights, boxes of stuff. Oh my God, it was unreal, right? And but in that mix, this was what's surprising, Joe, was there was like 25 or 30 pieces of artwork. Seriously, artwork. Most of them was Drew Tucker's artwork. He was a Drew Tucker lover, apparently. And I always liked Drew Tucker's work, like Dan, remember that? So all 4 Arabian Nights, Repentant at Blacksmith, City in the Bottle, Her Jackal. By the way, Dan was sold and stolen. The guy who owned it, he had it in a backpack, and he went to like dinner. He put it in the back seat of a car, and it was stolen. Yeah.
I know that feeling, unfortunately, but yeah, I think you got the repaint of that, didn't you?
Yeah, so what I started doing was I did oil repaints from Drew Tucker. He's a friend of mine who lives actually in Olympia also, in Washington. And he basically just did this beautiful oil repaint. And you know what? I'm very happy with it. And it's, but I can't, I wish I had the original or it was around to show you, but I have an old video. I have to find that. That reminds me. But the colors of that, the colors of the fish popping out of the pontoon, the two boats, it was so real. I mean, that emotionally was one of the dumbest things to do ever, to ever sell Dan Dan. Yeah, it was just, Dan Dan was one of those pieces that, um, like, I really regret selling. It was one of the most, I mean, a lot of people would be like, well, why'd you sell Jazan Dijin? That thing's amazing.
It's my
Probably has,
favorite piece, by the way.
yes, it's probably worth like $1 million now, whatever, right? I'm like, well, I was like, I didn't like it. I mean, I didn't like it you know what I mean? I thought, I know how iconic it was. And now that I look back at it, it was a better thing to hold it as an investment. But as a piece of artwork, I personally didn't appreciate as much, right? The pieces I really liked that were like Repetitive Blacksmith. I think that went to Germany, some other guy. And again, this was early in my career, and the money I made ended up becoming obviously multiple fold for cards, right? But I look back, I'm like, you know what? I really wish I didn't sell anything. Art. I really appreciate the art. And I think Josh may have talked about him doing a museum. When I first talked to him, he that was the reason why, the main reason why I wanted to sell him a lot of the art was because I thought he's going to do like a museum. And I didn't think I was going to do a museum type of thing, right? I didn't know if I wanted to do that. So it made me feel like it'd be good for him to, someone that actually could take a larger project out of it, right? And so, things changed, right? I think the museum, with the Corona situation, everything, it changed everything. But who knows? Maybe one day, a conglomeration of all the wonderful pieces and the sketches and the artist proofs and everything, whatever, right? Cards, they could all be in some type of museum or showing, so my kids and their grandkids and everything, you know what I mean? Everybody can, view them and appreciate it. And I'm sure there's going to be stuff about like the history of like the gaming. The gaming has such a robust part of Magic. It's awesome. So anyway, I felt like, so in that story out, this deal that I had. So when I made this deal, remember there was alpha set, beta set, all this unlimited set, everything, right? Everything you can imagine, boxes of stuff, starter decks, whatever. And there's these 25, 30 pieces. Oh, by the way, there was the Alpha Savannah in that collection by Rob Alexander. So that's why, and that piece is now, I think Josh has that too. So I think that was the only Alpha piece in that collection. But anyway, there's a lot of Drew Tucker, Arabian Nights. One of my favorite pieces in that collection was The People in the Woods, The Dark. I really appreciate that piece. I still own it. I love the artwork of that piece. It's beautiful. But to close it out, imagine I have all this boxes and cards, and then I was like, this deal was actually not going to happen because he wanted and insisted. He wanted, you ready, guys, for this? He wanted $3,000 for the artwork. And I was like, I don't want the artwork. I mean, I just want the, you know what I mean? Think about a guy who appreciate, I'm grading cards, I'm selling, what I mean? I'm like, $3,000? What are these, I'm like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. And we were negotiating back and forth. And it came down to $500. So I was like, I offered him $2,500. He goes, no, I want $3,000 or I'm not doing the entire deal. So I was like, you know what? Fine. Another lesson learned. Another lesson learned is never, how would you call it? Like, don't just quit. Don't try to piecemeal deals. Try to buy everything you can out of deals. Try to build value when you buy something. Another thing is I realized that you gotta buy deals and not shy away from an entire, you know what I mean? You never know what you're gonna get, right? Type of thing. And so obviously here I am in the Massachusetts airport. Oh, by the way, during that trip, I met with Melissa Benson, bought some artist proofs from her in Connecticut. It was just a crazy trip, right? And So here I am in the airport, and I'm not kidding, Joe. Here I am with 25, 30, I think it was like 30 pieces of artwork, and we have no space. And I'm literally in my backpack and stuff, stuffing the the Arabian Nights. I'm not kidding. And it was just like insane. But I remember that time. I was remembering that time, like, thinking on the airplane, I'm like, what the hell did I just, why did I just buy this? Like I had no idea. I also thought, like, another thing, Joe, is I didn't know they were, see, the thing is, I didn't know if they were prints. Do you see what I'm saying? Because I didn't, like, I thought all the artwork was gone of Magic, right? That's my assumption. So I didn't know if I was just buying some prints, or I didn't know what I didn't have time to unscrew the cases, you know what I mean? And the guy was legit, right? He said, well, their artwork, I got them from the Wizards Gallery years ago in Kirkland, Washington, when they had it, all that. So the provenance was great. So anyway, that's just a crazy story to end it out. That's kind of how I acquired a lot of pieces the first time. And it got me, then I got the bug, right? I got the bug. I went to Gen Con. I bought art. I bought art from everybody. And for, all I can say is nowadays it's a lot different. Nowadays you have, a lot of, private sellers, got the MTG art market. I think you have just very few, some dealers try to do some of the contemporary art, but the alpha art is just in collectors' hands. It's mostly, I think it's mostly in, 3 to 4 major collectors' hands. And then I'd probably say 4 or 5, probably. Yeah, 4 or 5 collectors' hands. And then there's scattered pieces all over the place. So, what's great, what's really great about what you guys are doing, I really like about it is that I've really come to appreciate that a lot of people will never be able to obviously purchase a piece of art or comic book or whatever, right? But you guys give that little, that little piece of it in not only a financial way, but I think hopefully, sorry guys, the dogs. Hopefully one day you guys do it in a way where, like, display it so people can all enjoy it, right? And really appreciate it all. I don't have a ton to say about Benalish Hero, but the big thing was just, it really represents the piece of history that I think a lot of people, really, I think some people, it's kind of like debated all the time. Like, they're like, well, this art's not beautiful. I don't know anything about this card. Art today is more beautiful. And I agree that the art today has something very beautiful about it. Like, it's more refined. You look at some of the digital art, it's absolutely gorgeous. I have respect for all phases of it. But as a person, like kind of a history person who loves history and life, who's a collector at heart, it's really nice. It's really unique to be able to be a part of that, the history of Magic and see it all. And I really hope you guys display some of the art one day to your investors. If you do one of those things, I can bring some art. I actually, last thing for sure I'll say is that I actually, before the Corona thing hit, in 2019, I brought a lot of pieces that when I was in these old school tournaments in Sweden, I flew with, like, the rare art, like the Underground Sea, the Time Walk, the Mock Sapphire, Savannah Lions, Mana Vault, the Clone, all these pieces. I flew on in Europe to show some of these old school collectors the art, and and also different travel events I went to, and people were just amazed. They were just so happy to be able. It's like they look at their cards, they're like, wow, this is what it was. This is what it began. This was Peter Atkinson's garage, right? I think in Kent, Washington or whatever. And this is where they laid it all out. And this is how they made the imagery of Magic, right? The visualization. And that's freaking awesome.